Well, hey, Gundam fans, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. Today we're continuing our look at 08MS team with the second episode, Gundams in the Jungle. So we had the first episode where it kind of more or less focused on the characters, us getting to know them, less about the Gundams. But with this episode, it's really jumping into the different Gundams. Really good scenery, really good composition just in terms of filmmaking, storytelling. Yeah, so we'll dive into that. Hey, but before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe. There's a giveaway going on, link in the description for that. And as you watch this video, if you like it, give it a like. Yeah, that would help. So, yeah, let's go. All right, so here's the whole team together. They've landed on Earth. It's kind of cool seeing them all together already. Obviously, some of the other characters are already down on Earth. But yeah, they're rolling out to where their first mission is going to take them. Now, is Shiro already thirsty? He just met Karen, or is it just the acting just kind of sounds like that? I don't know. Very cool shot here. Okay, it's just so cool how we're seeing these ground Gundams, and again the composition here, right? So it's using some sort of what you would call, I think, parallax, or it's where they have different panels of the art. They have the matte painting of the background. They probably have some foreground animation and probably some stuff in between there, but it really helps kind of show off the scale and the scope of how big these things are, especially when this is really primarily focused on the ground battles. So we're really getting a good idea. But it's also interesting how these are just straight up Gundams, from something I've learned recently. We see the GM, the GEMs, that's supposed to stand for a Gundam. So the idea that, the GMs don't have the V-fin, but then we have these with the V-fin, I think is very interesting how it's kind of like this mass-produced Gundam type. I do like the world building that's going on a little bit here at the beginning, where we have people that are used to being out in space, being out in the colonies, and then them on Earth. They talk about the smell, finding the smell on Earth unique. Talking about the air conditioning, say it feels good to finally be able to breathe unprocessed or uncirculated air. So, something I really gotta give a hand to when it comes to 08MS team is the dialogue. As you get to learn about the characters, it's in context of the world they're in. Space versus Earth, mobile suits on the ground versus space. So yeah, for those of you that really like Gundam and want to get immersed in the world, this does a really good job of it. So as they're getting briefed on their secret mission, you can kind of hear the other officers sort of gossiping about the crew that has been put together. And so their mission really revolves around some sort of Xeon factory in the area. And the Federation wants to be able to kind of seek it out, see what they're up to. And they made mention of civilians in the area, so to be careful. From my understanding, a lot with 08MS team is the idea that this kind of takes some ideas of some of the real world war that would have taken place, Vietnam specifically. So you kind of have the jungle setting. They talk about the civilians in the area. And, some of the gossip going around is talking about Sanders as the team killer, whereas members of his team usually gets killed. And I guess that kind of bothers them. And of course, that would bother anyone. They really don't want to have to be responsible for death or be known for that. Okay, so the team is kind of getting their machinery, their weapons, most of them getting into their mobile suits. But the difference is with these two. So Elidor and Mikkel are in the hover truck. This kind of helps in a way with reconnaissance. It gives information to the rest of the team. It kind of has some radar stuff going on where it can penetrate the ground, kind of get an idea of where a mobile suit might be in the area or some other kind of weaponry, machinery. And here's kind of a look at it. Very cool looking. And you can actually get this in Gunpla form. I think it comes with some ground war version of a ground unit, a ground Gundam, and I think a couple of tanks, possibly. And I want to say, is it that the option part set for the new Robot Spirits might include that as well? So it's got a 20mm Gatling gun. Yeah, and it reminds me of when I'm playing SD Generation Genesis. I have that as one of my units. Yeah, I really only have a Gatling gun to use. But the underground sonar probe is the main feature here. It's a sonic spying device. So it was developed in response to the inability to use conventional radar to search for enemies on the battlefield under the dispersal of Minovsky particles. So there you go. All right, and here we have a look at the ground Gundam. So let's dive in a little bit to that. So here's the RX-79G Gundam ground type. It's a limited production mobile suit first featured in 08 MS Team. The Gundam ground type was one of the early prototypes for the Earth Federation's mobile suit mass production plan, produced in limited numbers before the recovery of the RX-78-2 Gundam's combat data. As its name suggests, it was designed solely with the ground combat in mind, and all space use equipment, as well as the core block system, were omitted. Okay, so the space use equipment, core block system omitted makes sense. This caused the Gundam ground type to be lighter, allowing it to rival the performance of the RX-78 while under gravity, which obviously makes sense. Being on land, core block system not as necessary, as that's some of the transformable needs that you can do in space. Even though we see that happen in the Earth's atmosphere in the original Mobile Suit Gundam, it's a lot easier without the gravity to be able to use that configuration. So in order to save time and cost, the RX-79G was constructed using surplus parts for the RX-78. So in total, 20 units were produced. So this wasn't mass production. This was limited based on the RX-78-1 prototype, and they call this the RX-79. So that kind of gives more information, about that, whereas they were still early in their mobile suit production, the Earth Federation was, and so with the ground combat that was needed, they were able to kind of develop this more cost-effective Gundam to be able to mass produce the Gundam, but still required limited numbers. Now, and this was basically, like it said, off of spare parts. So this kind of helps with the in-universe lore about how come there's not just tons of Gundams in general mass produced, the RX-78 too. They had to take a lot of things into account. And again, the RX-78-2 just being a prototype, core block system used mainly in space. They had to make some changes in order to limit mass produce them for ground combat. And really cool to get a look at a Zeon DOP, kind of designed in the more updated and detailed way that 08 MS Team kind of lends to its designs. And again, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, but the DFA-03 DOP is the Principality of Zeon's only atmospheric fighter aircraft during the One-Year War. It appeared in the anime series Mobile Suit Gundam 08 MS Team. And I think, an interesting thing about this is these were produced for the atmospheric flight. So with the ground battles that were occurring in 08 MS Team, you had the Federation creating the ground Gundam for that specific use, and you have this DOP also created for that specific use. Okay, and here we're kind of just going back to the Zeon side of things. Aina just arrived in that DOP to meet up with her brother, embracing each other in maybe a creepy way, or maybe they're just that close. Very cool. I love that animation of it lifting. The team is going out at night for their mission to look for this base where they'll run into some Zaku's. And it's cool to see Shiro kind of take the lead here. I guess the idea the team wants to be able to protect the commander, but he wants to lead. He wants to. It's a mix of him kind of having that confidence. Obviously, he was able to show himself by using just a ball to fight a Zaku. But at the same time, he kind of wants to show his team that he knows what he's doing. Something he has to get over, though, is using a Gundam or using a mobile suit in general on land instead of in space, which is what he was used to originally. Really cool shots here. I love how they portray these ground Gundams. All right, and this is the hover tank using its little sonic sonar there, picking up information of what's going on. All right, and so, the Zaku's are in the jungle too, so they have engaged with the enemy, and some battling takes place. And Shiro kind of getting his bearings on being on land, kind of messes up where he's really just trying to partly show off, but partly lead his team. Now, this is a cool shot. Shiro's lost. The team is looking for the commander. He's kind of embarrassed. They decide not to go look for him and find him because they're afraid to embarrass him, and hopefully he comes back on his own. But then they kind of get Shiro on some little adventure here. Shiro's fumbling around, just trying to find his way back. He got out of his Gundam, fell into some mud, comes across some water so he can drink and potentially bathe, but he comes across someone. And nothing I can really show off here, I guess, unless I get the video taken down, or if I want a good thumbnail to get some viewers. I don't know what would happen there, but there's frontal nudity here, which I guess is it's kind of an odd thing here. In the story, she is 17 years old. That is kind of technically considered illegal in some territories. But really, at the end of the day, it is sort of harmless. Really, it's not being used in a derogatory way. This is just a person bathing, and you see this guy who's not much older than her anyway. Obviously has interest or is surprised to see that. So you can kind of see where it's just kind of interesting where these mindsets collide of what is acceptable, what is not. But I guess for purpose of this video, I can't really show any of that. And Anna and her brother are speaking. He's talking about how that test unit was lost, and he's asking, was that absolutely necessary? And she's like, hey, it had to do with my life. Is that okay? So I kind of like some of the dialogue that's going on here because you can kind of see her side of the things, even being with Xeon, compared to her brothers, even though she loves her brother. Her brother Guineas mentions the Osprus. That's kind of the experimental mobile armor that we'll get more of a look at here. But then also it pans up to a portrait of Degwin Zabi, so you can kind of see their kind of commitment to the cause of, I guess, more of the Zabi family in general. And so from the first episode, Shiro got Aina's watch. She kind of handed it to him as like a pocket watch, and it kind of goes off while he's at that that water at the little lake or pond or whatever. And so Kiki hears that, and so she's kind of offended that someone is creeping on her, and she starts shooting at him, and he runs away. Kind of a goofy little scene. Cameron's kind of talking trash to Sanders. It's sad because Sanders seems like such a swell guy, and she just kind of has that attitude whenever she feels like it. Yeah, I don't know. But they're kind of out there waiting. They're kind of taking turns, just waiting for the commander to come back. They have to kind of watch for him. Shiro, back in the jungle, is in his mobile suit. Comes across Zaku, and they have a showdown. Really cool animation here. Again, they really do ground the combat, which is excellent. Really makes this look good. And so Kiki happens to watch that happen, and so maybe that is of her interest because it shows that the Federation is kind of stopping Xeon, if indeed Xeon does have their factory out here and maybe causing trouble for the local population. Very cool shot here because this is closer late evening, the sun's going down. Just the way they've drawn this, where the sun is kind of casting light in a way where you have the shadows, but then you have the pilots working on their mobile suits. A lot of this just looks really good, top tier Gundam work here. Mikkel, he's writing in his journal. This is a recurring theme. We're going to get more into that later, but this is just kind of building some of that character development here. And another cool shot yet again. This is where, again, that sun is setting. Shiro has found his way back to the camp. Got his cockpit open, just kind of laying there. Just very cool, very well done. And then that fun little ending, which another nice little piece of music that you can kind of chill to, which is kind of another unique charm of 08 MS Team. And so that does it for the second episode. I think it's a really well done episode. We did meet a couple new characters. We're getting the development of some characters that we've already met, but we're also seeing a lot of world building around ground type battles here, where we had the ground type Gundams out in the jungle facing off against some Zakus. What it's like getting lost in the jungle, having used the hover tank and the sonar ability to kind of get more data about what is happening in the jungle. So I really think that's a very strong episode, and it really kind of helps cement the world building of the mech combat, as opposed to the first episode just centered more around the characters and some space elements in the beginning. So yeah, let me know what you think. Maybe what some of your favorite weaponry machinery was from this episode. I think that ground type Gundam is awesome. I think everyone loves that. I don't know if anyone dislikes it. It's certainly different from space, but it has a very, a real look to it. If a Gundam was real and happened to have to be operated on the ground, They did an excellent job with that. So anyway, yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll talk later.